but we recently did a case study on Nadine Heights,
Oh,
and she showed that she was actually saving about 3 to 5 hours per case. And she has a lot of cases. So that was amounting up to several hundreds of hours of work per year. And so it actually is producing like a pretty significant return on her team's time. Because when you think about it, all that wasted time is going into your paralegal. You're paying your paralegal, how much per hour, and so you're really like that. You don't think about it, but you're actually losing like a lot of productivity there.
welcome up to Power Up Your Practice. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, law firm owner and law practice management consultant. Each week, we learn from inspiring legal minds and share practical tips so that you can work smarter, serve your clients better, and grow your firm. After all, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Let's power up together. This episode is sponsored by Pipefile, the secure document collection and e-signature platform that helps you get client documents faster. Elevate your client experience and speed up intake with the fastest, easiest way for clients to scan and upload files, fill forms, and sign documents from any device with no logins required. Learn more at pipefile.com. Welcome back, everyone. This is Ruby Powers, your host of Power Up Your Practice. And today I have the founder and CEO of Pipefile.com. It is Steve Recio. I have definitely seen him at different conferences and excited to learn more about the client journey and sort of his perspective on things. But Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ruby. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. I will have to say that the first time I ever heard of Pipefile was Nadine Heights from Florida, a fellow
Mhm.
immigration attorney of mine,
Yep.
a friend of mine, was raving about you, or Pipefile specifically. So, so, and so I often think of her when I think of your company, and then I've heard a lot of other people mention it as a really good tool, especially for sometimes low tech clients, but I'm sure there could be a lot of different tech capabilities. And then
Sure.
you also have different help attorneys with different case types. So just
Yep.
before we get started more about the client journey experience, like, can you tell us a little bit more about Pipefile?
Yeah, sure. So Pipefile is a platform for collecting documents and really kind of streamlining your client intake process. So really information gathering, collecting documents, collecting forms, really managing that process. So, especially in something like a document heavy case type like immigration, clients are being asked to produce tons of different documentation. They have tons of questions. They have to fill out different forms. And so it's really like a complicated process. And so we're trying to kind of really streamline that and make a really streamlined, easy to use platform for that process.
What made you want to start this company?
Yeah. So, I started out kind of with like a bit of a security background. And so kind of how it started was, I was working with an accountant and they were asking me to email a lot of my personal financial documents.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and and yeah, so I kind of just thought, there's got to be a better way than email for this. I just didn't really feel super comfortable with it. And so kind of security was kind of like our kind of how I got into it. And then I just talked to a lot of different people in a lot of different, service areas. So accountants, financial advisors, attorneys, obviously. And kind of what I gathered was that most folks didn't have a really easy to use go-to platform. So, there was systems like DocuSign for signing documents, but there really wasn't like a great service for kind of collecting all those documents that we feel so sensitive about. There was a few platforms out there, but they seemed outdated. And so when I talked to folks, everybody was mostly asking for things over email, or they were kind of trying to juggle different tools. They were kind of trying to kind of jerry rig their Dropbox to work with clients. And so I really felt like there was a need for just an easy to use tool for everyone that could say, hey, this is what I need from you, send it over. And then as I kind of got talking to folks, we really learned that there was actually like a lot of inefficiency in the process, that it wasn't only about security, that it was really about this kind of customer journey of this whole process of collecting documentation, because it can be really arduous both for the service provider, for the attorney, as well as for the client. They can just feel really overwhelmed by the whole process.
Yeah, I think that you're so right. Like, there was a time a while back when we would give our clients like a link to Dropbox to upload, especially like our employment-based clients, because they were like this is a lot of stuff. This is really important things. And
Yeah.
then I've also thought about that too when I was doing like buying the building that I'm in about 3 years ago. Just like
Mhm.
the real estate or mortgage broker was like we weren't using a DocuSign, and then we were having to send all of these things a certain way. And I was just like, isn't there like a more secure way of communicating these types of documents? So, um, well, so and then you have a lot of integrations as well,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we've built, we started out by building integrations with all of the major kind of cloud storage systems. So Dropbox, Microsoft SharePoint, Google Drive, all those different systems. Because what we found was that when we talked to folks, when they wanted a secure, beyond email, when they wanted kind of a more secure way to collect the documentation, what they would do is they would create a customer folder for each client that they were working with. And then they would create subfolders potentially with all the different kind of categories that they had. Um, but it wasn't really easy for them to recreate that for every new client. So every new client that they had to kind of recreate that whole folder structure from scratch. It just wasn't like an easy, like, hey, let's grab this template. We have this repeatable process that we have. Let's send this link to the client, something easy for them to, open up on their phone or their computer or kind of what have you. Um, and so, yeah, so we started building integrations with all those different services. We actually just finally released our kind of official file syncing feature about a month ago. So now attorneys, when they go through in their Pipefile accounts, when they go through and they like approve documents. So the way Pipefile works is that when you request documents, you have the option to approve, reject, mark incomplete, different categories. And so when you actually approve the documentation, they'll actually get synced to the appropriate folder in those cloud storage systems. Because what we find is that attorneys and firms, they're using those systems to store the documents long term and keep them organized for their internal team, but they're not the best tools for actually like getting the documents from the clients.
This episode is sponsored by Candle AI, the legal email assistant that helps legal teams spend less time on client emails. You heard me right, spending less time on emails. Candle AI works with both Gmail and Outlook, so you don't have to learn a new tool. And then it connects with popular case management systems like Clio, Filevine, INSSoom, and more to come. It instantly shows you your case and the client details the moment you open a client email and right inside your inbox. Then that means less context switching and time spent jumping to different tabs to figure out what you need to respond. Candle can also draft context-aware responses to client emails and makes it easy to create, edit, and manage your email templates. If you want to save time and take back control of your inbox, check out Candle AI. I highly suggest it. Well, so when I think overall you call this like part of over evaluating like the client journey is what you were
Mhm.
mentioning. And so like what did you notice that what do you notice about law firms in this space? Like
Yeah.
they are really cognizant of it, or like they sort of overlook it?
Yeah, I think it's often an overlooked problem that they don't realize that they have. So I think that once a firm actually adopts a tool, they tend to see like a huge efficiency gains. So they can they can service that many more clients, not have to do as much admin when they have the appropriate systems in place. So what we find is that most folks come to us, they maybe have some sort of a process. So a lot of them start with like a PDF or a Word document that they have for all the different kind of documents that they need from clients, during that initial engagement and intake process. And so what we
Mhm.
find is what most firms are doing is they will email their clients a PDF kind of a like document request checklist, and they'll say, "Hey, these are all the documents we need from you. Feel free to send them over whenever you're ready." And that seems great, and that does work. But the problem, what you start to see is that you have multiple people in the firm, so clients are interacting with maybe one or two different paralegals, a few different partners at the firm. So there's like a lot of different touch points going on. And
Mhm.
so when clients, when it comes time to actually like produce those documents, the clients they'll email one paralegal with a few documents, and then they'll kind of drop the ball. They don't know what is missing. They maybe don't remember exactly what they sent. So you'll have kind of different multiple email threads going on at one given time. And documents just kind of get scattered around. Firms are kind of struggling to like piece together like where everything is. And it's really just much harder at that point to communicate to the client, like, hey, this is what you've submitted. This is what's still remaining. Do you have any questions? Where are you stuck, basically? And so what we really focus on is like, how do we remove that friction so clients at any given time, they know exactly what they need to do.
So if are some of the case management software programs, do they have something similar? Or do you find that people, lawyers are using this Pipefile when it either doesn't exist with their existing case management software or they don't like what exists with their case management software?
Usually it happens when they don't like what is offered by their case management software. Although in a lot of cases, folks aren't even using a case management software, or they really don't like it. They really don't like it, and so they're just not using it at all. And so they're really like going back to, okay, just like email me all the information.
Mm.
Um, and so what we've found is that a lot of the case management portals, they're really built as an afterthought. So case management systems are really designed for attorneys and kind of like that internal work and internal organization.
Mm.
They're not
Mhm.
really their focus is there, and their focus is not quite on the client experience. So giving the client a simple place for like, okay, this is everything that we need to provide. They do tend to do a good job with like status of the case, so the client can say, okay, where are we in the journey? But they don't necessarily get into the nitty gritty of like, okay, how do we get past this like intake process? What's still missing for me as a client?
That's an interesting point. So you find that a lot of the case management software programs that are out there were more built for the internal workings of the law firm and not really the client facing side. Like I think some of the even like client portals and things like that were sort of like an afterthought in some
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So in a lot of cases, they require the client to log in. So the client will have to remember their email and password to log in.
for yet
So
another place to do.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yet another thing to log into,
Mhm.
which just makes it more challenging because the client oftentimes they'll get a notification in their email or in their email, and they'll open that up on their phone. So they open it up on their phone. They don't remember the password for the case management system. Then they've got to go find their laptop. They kind of have to sit down and like do this whole process, and it reduces a lot of friction when the client can just click on the link anywhere that they open it up, whether that's their computer, their phone. They don't have to remember that password to get into the system. And they can just get a clear view of like, okay, I've submitted these 5 out of 20 things. What's the next step for me to take?
But even if there's not a password, is it still secure?
Yes. So the way we do it is we don't actually expose the documents themselves to the clients. So the clients can kind of see the list of what they've submitted, but they're not actually able to like open up their passport or something like that from the link.
Oh, oh.
Um,
So
and
it's more
so
of like a one-way submission in a secure
yeah, it's kind
portal
of
or
like a
some
one
sort.
yeah, like a one-way checklist, exactly. And then of
Mm.
course the links are like obscured, so they're cryptographically difficult to guess. And so kind of that's how we manage that process. But yeah, I just think that the case management systems, it's kind of a blind spot. A lot of them try to do this, but they're being pulled in so many different directions. And so that's, I think, the challenge when you come to kind of building a piece of software that does everything. It kind
Mhm.
of does everything okay, but there's always going to be blind spots.
I should have known what this meant, but I was just at this conference called TLTF recently, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna admit something embarrassing, but I didn't know what point solution meant.
Okay.
And for those listeners, it's like basically a program that does like one thing super well. Or how do you
Mhm.
would you define it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a piece of software that really just focuses on one part of the puzzle.
Right. And so I agree with you. Like I think that we're sort of in this space where like there's a race to be everything to everyone.
Mhm.
But then like it's sort of like the all-in-one printer type of thing where like the scanner, the printer, the blah blah blah, whatever. I don't
Mhm.
know. And then it's like, can it really do that well? But I mean, I know there's like hopes to do that. Like there's yeah, but then like there is a benefit to just having like point solutions that are just like really good at solving that thing, whatever that thing is, that pain point that you need.
Mhm.
And so um but I love how this is like sort of the way you're formulating this is like it's really more from the client perspective for security, for ease, to reduce the
Mhm.
friction. I'm always all about reducing the friction. And I mean, even if a person were not to use Pipefile, like just whatever they were to use, like the idea is to think about it from the client journey, from the client's perspective. How
Mhm.
does it make it easier for them to interact? And I mean, from a practicing attorney's point of view, the sooner I get those documents, the sooner I can file, the sooner everyone's happier, the sooner I get paid, the
Exactly.
sooner things get resolved. Bada
Mhm.
bing, bada boom, it moves faster, so why not make it easier?
Yeah, exactly. So, attorneys, they can't really do their work until they have everything that they need, right? And so, really, when firms are thinking about kind of how do they structure their process, they should really think through kind of at every stage of the customer journey, kind of what is the next step and what's the best tool for that. I think of it, something like Calendly. A lot of folks use Calendly just to schedule meetings. And
Mhm.
before we all used email, and no one really thought twice about it. They didn't think twice about it until they realized how much easier it is to just like receive a link and pick a time on a calendar versus saying, hey, I'm free on Tuesdays in the afternoons and Thursdays in the mornings. What time works best for you, kind of like playing that ping pong. And so I think finding like those point solutions that really like focus, like, just Calendly just does calendar scheduling, but they do it
Mhm.
really, really well. So if you have a team, you can route folks to the right person at the right team, depending on when they're free. It syncs with all of your existing calendars so that the system actually knows kind of when are you actually available. And so you don't have to do this kind of like ping pong communication of like, okay, well, I'm free at this time, you're not, but you're free at that time. And so thinking through those kind of using those point solutions can actually really like unlock a lot of productivity. And I think folks get hung up on like, oh, I don't want like one more tool, one more $20 a month subscription, whatever that is. But what I usually find is that when folks adopt something like that, they realize that actually they get 10x or more back from adopting
Mm.
those tools.
And before we started, you told me that there's a lot of other there's various practice areas that have found that are using Pipefile. So like I'm in the immigration space, but you mentioned you started out more in the family law area and then expanded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we got a lot of traction from folks in the discovery process in family law, which is very document intensive, and it can really last for months. And so having a single place where every client can go and see kind of what the status is, what they still need to provide, has been really beneficial. And so yeah, I think the beauty of our system is that it's very flexible. So it can be used. We even have folks outside of law, like mortgage brokers and
Huh.
accountants and folks like that using the software as well. And so it's a very generic, flexible piece of software. And so what we find is that folks are able to make it work for their workflow in a variety of different contexts. And so that could be really helpful. And a lot of the case management systems, they kind of force you down a certain path. They kind of have they have like their prescribed way of doing things. But really, when it comes to this process, it needs that flexibility. It needs structure, but also a flexible structure that the attorney can kind of define on their own.
So and then you can use uh, the clients are uploading things from like their phones. It
Yep.
doesn't require. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So another big piece of kind of friction that we removed late last year was actually building an integrated scanner into the application. So,
Mm.
typically you would have to ask your client to, hey, download a scanning app to your phone so that you can scan all your paper documents into a PDF because, attorneys hate receiving an email with, 20 different pictures of pieces of paper laid out on the floor or on someone's desk. And
Yeah.
so we've actually built an actual scanner into the application. So clients can receive a link on their phone, they get a text message, they click the link, they open up their camera phone, they don't have to download any additional software. It all works seamlessly in the browser. And so it just reduces yet another friction point. No more, they don't have to download some app that they're only going to use once.
What are some of your just general things that you've been learning being in the client journey space from like what are essentials to have in like either a client portal or intake
Mhm.
process to just sort of like some of the things your clients have been telling you about their clients and just what are some other things that we should be thinking about in the client journey?
Yeah, sure. So what I've seen a lot of folks do is they'll adopt a tool that is kind of like a, more secure way to send the documents. So think like using something like WhatsApp. So they'll open up a
Mhm.
WhatsApp thread with the client and they'll say, hey, just dump your documents in here. The problem is, how do you get those documents out? The client doesn't have that clear, like updated status of all the different checklist items that they have.
Mm.
So that's a big one. And I've seen a lot of client portals that kind of look like that. It's like, okay, you can leave messages, you can attach files, like you can do it all right here. Great. The problem is that the system doesn't update. So you're having to then scroll up through this long conversation. Maybe that conversation is 6 months old, because some of these cases take a long time.
You
And
mean
so
like you don't get a notification that that information has been updated, or what do you mean it hasn't been updated?
yeah, so imagine you send the client like a PDF in this portal and it says, hey, these are all the documentation we need. And the client has uploaded 5 documents. There's no updated checklist that the client just like quickly can say, okay, I've submitted this. They can see the original requests. So they can see the
Oh,
PDF that the attorney originally sent them saying, hey, these are the things that I need. But that checklist doesn't update. And I think that's really helpful, just providing folks just like, okay, green light, red light, yellow light, this is what needs my attention. This is the next thing that I have to do.
it's like a good visual to help them walk them through what how they're doing
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
uploading process. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it sort of reminds me of a gamification in a way of like, like, oh, I'm almost done, or like I'm almost there. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Exactly. It just yeah, it just helps folks like stay organized and know exactly, because they clients, when you think about it, the attorney is doing this process kind of all day every day.
Mhm.
They are working with dozens, hundreds, thousands of clients in their career, and the client only does this probably one time in their life. And so they're completely blind to this process. It's the first time they've ever done this. They've never had to, go get an apostille document. They've never had to do any of these things before, so it's all new. And so by removing the friction, you're just gonna move clients through your funnel that much faster and be able to service that many more clients.
Have you done like statistics on like how much faster your clients are able to collect documents from their clients, your users, than people who don't use a program like this? That or like just traditional email, for example.
Yeah, sure. So we need to do a bit more of that, but we recently did a case study on Nadine Heights,
Oh,
and she showed that she was actually saving about 3 to 5 hours per case, and she has a lot of cases, so that was amounting up to several hundreds of hours of work per year. And so it actually is producing like a pretty significant return on her team's time. Because when you think about it, all that wasted time is going into your paralegal. You're paying your paralegal, how much per hour, and so you're really like that. You don't think about it, but you're actually losing like a lot of productivity there.
and we're in this sort of this space where I think they're looking at alternative billing models and
Hmm.
um all AI and everything that's going on. And I think like even though like my practice area is heavily flat fee, but there's other
Hmm.
practice areas that haven't moved over there. There's also talk about subscription model and then just other alternative models. But when yeah, I mean, it all adds up. So, like, the more
Yeah.
efficient you can be, the faster you can file, the faster you can collect the documents, the less going back and forth. I actually even earlier today, one of my leadership team was talking about a particular assistant that's taking a little bit longer to collect documents, and I'm just like, well, yeah, that's a big part of the whole equation. Like it's so much easier when it's like right in front of us. Like, oh, it's like the puzzle pieces in front of us. Like, but when you're
Yeah.
only giving like a few here and there, or you have to go chase them down from the client. But
Mhm.
sometimes we blame, well, we don't blame the client for anything, but about for taking a while to give us what we need. But I really could see the value in making it easier for them to provide that information. And so then you can move along with the whole client journey a lot sooner. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, the firm is the one kind of presenting the client with their process. And so if something is taking a long time, oftentimes it actually comes down to the process. So you tend to think that it's
mm.
simple and it's an easy thing to do. But the client, like I said, they may not know, they've forgotten because they're kind of in a stressful period of their life. They may have forgotten what they've provided. And so yeah.
So where do you think Pipefile going to expand in other capacities, or like or continue to grow, and or what's the future for Pipefile?
Yeah, so we're just, every day folks come to us with new problems, new edge cases, new things for us to handle. We've added, about a year ago, we added e-signatures into the platform as well, because obviously that's an important part of the intake process. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just, scan or upload a document. A lot of times it's, okay, now we actually have to fill out this form. And so, there's just, we just find that folks are always bringing problems to us. I think anyone who's ever run a business will realize that clients will always find problems in your process, or whatever your offering is. And so we're always just talking to folks and figuring out what that next step is. Even small things like, recently we just added support for Chinese characters in e-signature forms. Previously, Chinese signatures would
Interesting.
cause kind of encoding errors. And so there's all these like little edge cases that you don't think about until you're actually like kind of in the weeds with things. And especially in something like immigration law, you need something that works with every character set out there. And so having that expanded capability is super important.
That's awesome. Well, I think this has been a good reminder on thinking about the client journey and the client experience and how to improve that flow, reduce the friction. I often talk about that in my presentations or my courses. Just the business concept of that, reducing the friction to make it easier. Either whether it's from the being onboarded and hired
Mhm.
to collecting the documents. Actually, does Pipefile do anything with like the before hire process, like collecting documents for a consultation or like intake? Do people use it in like sort of like a CRM esque type of functionality?
Yeah, so they'll definitely use it for kind of initial discovery documents.
Hmm.
And we make it really easy to kind of create different templates for all of the different case types and the different, different requirements that you may have. And so, yeah, we've been really surprised by all the variety of use cases that folks are using it for. And yeah, we've been integrating AI into the system, and yeah, so there's always room for improvement.
Awesome. Well, I think I forgot to mention that you Pipefile was also a one of the ALA Tech Summit Spotlight earners. One of the companies highlighted as a under the spotlight back in for was it September 2025 in
Yep.
Boston. So congratulations for that as well.
Yeah, thank you. And it was great to see you there, and it's really cool, like the whole community that's forming around there. So it was really great to meet up in person and hang out with everyone. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. I really see a lot of value in a lot of those in the legal tech space or in law practice management or just that forward thinking space can get together and share ideas. And even if there's some overlap between different companies and sort of functionality, like being able to just know what's out there, help our clients and to improve the experience. Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the different things you have to do to run a law firm? Well, you're not alone. So many law firm owners are in the same boat. That's where Staffy steps in. More than 90 firms just like yours are leaning on their bilingual virtual staff for legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work, plus their full HR support. I currently have 11 team members with Staffy across my own firm and Power Strategy Group, and it's been a total game changer. Schedule a free initial consultation at staffy.cc, that's stafi.cc, and use the code RUBY, RUBY, for $500 off. So, Steve, now we're at the point where I ask these rapid questions.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite board game?
My favorite board game is probably Monopoly. Um, and
Okay.
I and I think the reason is that Monopoly really teaches you patience. I don't know if you've if you've ever played Monopoly, but no Monopoly game ends within 5 hours. And so I think it's really a good lesson that it's a great business lesson, really, that good things take time, and that often it's a game of attrition, and it's a matter of who's willing to spend the most time to win.
It's sort of funny because I think Monopoly has been the most popular answer to this question. I guess like I've asked maybe like 90 times so far. So I'm
Really.
gonna have to get an assistant to like make put it like a ranking so we can keep track of this. But I will tell listeners that there's this game called Monopoly Deal. And you can play it's with cards, so instead of a board game, and you can play it a lot faster, and I really enjoy that game with my family. As soon as I learned about it a few years ago, like we don't play Monopoly anymore. We just play Monopoly Deal, but it's the same concept, but you can
Mhm.
play it faster. So, but I agree. Patience, negotiation. We actually have modifications on the game as well. But anyway, what would you consider your superpower?
My superpower, I would say, is seeing things that are complex and making them simple. So I really love just the process of really refining something. So, I've really made a career out of that, is finding something that is a really complicated process and just simplifying it, simplifying it, simplifying it. I remember watching a design talk a long time ago, and they said that the most ideal app design just has one button, because there's nothing to confuse the user about. They just have to press that one button. All they got to do is press that button.
I mean,
Um,
I I like your website actually because it's like simple in a way of like it's easy to read it and
yep.
figure out. So I could see how you use that ethos for your website as well. So
Hmm.
that that makes sense. And yeah, make it easy for the clients, make it easy to read, make it easy to upload, make it easy to use. Don't
Yep.
have to click a
Mhm.
lot of buttons. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good
don't
point.
don't don't bombard the client with a giant block of text. Make sure things are broken out visually so that it's easy to scan and kind of know what they have to do.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, so what is a habit that you believe contributes to your success?
Sure. I think the biggest habit is just every single day I try to kind of complete one, improve something every single day. Because I've always heard that is, you want to compound your wins, right? So you want to improve everything that you do if you get 1% better every day. I forget the exact math, but you have this, in crazy exponential gain over time. And I think it's really easy just to every day think through one thing in your process that you can improve. So, map out your customer journey and find all those friction points. And every day just say, okay, what's the slowest process that we have? And let's just make it like 1% faster.
I love that. And I think that's a really great practical tip for those like whatever programs you are using. To just and I had a consultant a long, long time ago make us do that. We wrote out all the different steps and we had like swim lanes and post-its and we were like evaluating. And that's when we realized some of those bottlenecks and redundancies. And so I think that's a really good practical tip to be like a ghost client. I guess I don't know if that's the expression, like a ghost
Mhm.
shopper or whatever, to see what it takes to be a client for your own firm, see what the process is and find ways to eliminate the unnecessary and the annoying and the redundancies. Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, so what is a favorite book or podcast that you like super duper love or want to recommend to our listeners?
Sure. I think probably my favorite book is Shoe Dog, the story of
The
Nike.
Nike one? Okay.
Yeah.
You're like the second or third person to say that. Man, I gotta read that
Okay.
now. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great book. I mean, you really see kind of the journey that he went on. It's easy to kind of see someone like that and kind of see their success kind of at the end. But you really kind of see like his whole kind of hero arc, whole journey. Before he starts the company, he goes on a giant trip around the world, goes to Japan, goes to India, and then you really see just like how long it takes to build, an enduring brand like Nike. It took him really his whole life. So I think it's a really great book and really inspiring.
I love that. Yeah, I need to get more into the biographies esque type of books. Yeah, because it's almost like running through a movie in a way of like, but you learn a lot of like business and life lessons. Um, I have so many books in Audible right now. I need to just finish some of them now I think about it. But that's great. And I think as entrepreneurs, you learn a lot of insight, whether listening to podcasts or reading or speaking to other entrepreneurs to sort of like learn and get more of it. And it starts all piecing things together of like how relevant different moments in their lives have what the impact was on their decision making and their
Hmm.
influence.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from biographies. Even if it's not kind of like directly applicable to you, there's always like lessons that you can learn from everyone's story, I feel. And um, And so it's just a matter of kind of like learning about their story and finding the tidbits that apply to you, and kind of getting that inspiration of, oh, maybe I could try that, or maybe that would work for me.
Exactly. Well, Steve, where can people find you and sort of learn more about you and keep the conversation going?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously pipefile.com. You can reach out to me over email. I'm steve@pipefile.com. And then obviously on our LinkedIn page, and then my personal LinkedIn page, Steve Recio.
Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. It really puts a focus on the client journey and just thinking how that you could 1x one the improvement, or that those just incrementally little improvements can have a big impact on just everything, from reducing that friction, speeding up the filing of the case, speeding up the satisfaction of knowing that the process is done, and a resolution, and then being able to move up to more cases along the way. So it just a small change can have a big impact. And I think evaluating the client journey, so often we don't really always think of it from that perspective, especially like you said, a lot of these programs are built more from the back end, on how we work, but not necessarily how we work with our clients in the client facing space. Well, thanks so much, Steve, and thanks for everyone listening. You can find us all where the podcasts are found. Feel free to like and share, tell other people about us, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Your Practice. I'm Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. We love your reviews, so if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us one and share this podcast with someone else so that they can know what you've been learning on our show. And make sure to check out the Power Up Your Practice book. It's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. It's packed with 25 chapters of strategies to grow and streamline your firm. And we also have the free Power Hub community on School to keep the conversation going in between the episodes. So make sure to keep powering up your practice, and we'll see you next time.